welcome everybody to another fabulous show on self love. Our theme for the fourth annual Video a Day Debruary. Our guest tonight is Joffree McClung. She's a spiritual slash personal growth author and an advocate for good old common sense. She's written two books, but the one we'll be focusing on this evening is the second one, entitled The Heart of the Matter, a workbook and guide to finding your way back to self love. Thought it fits in perfectly with what we're trying to do here this month. She says this book was born out of the work that she did to heal her own wounds and beliefs of the past and move successfully and fully into self love. The book at the front is dedicated to all the people who long for a more loving and compassionate world and are not sure where to start. So that definitely describes most of the viewers. She's here to share some tips and direction for you on how you can heal your old wounds, modify some beliefs that you may be holding on to that are holding you back, and position yourself for true self-love. Let's welcome Joffrey to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be with you.
I'm just as thrilled as you are for you to be here too. So let's start. Let's talk a little bit about your book. I'm gonna, kind of hop around as
That's fine.
things fit. But I really wanted to know why, what motivated you to write this book and share your own, personal struggles, because from what I've seen, most people don't really want to share those kind of things. It makes them feel too vulnerable, too out there or something.
Oh,
So I thought that was pretty brave.
well, thank you very much. I thought it was pretty brave too, frankly, because my background is television and theater world and film world. So this was sharing a very private part of my life. I had written another book earlier that was highlighting what my best friend and I were doing while she was basically dying from breast cancer. And we were still doing our inner work to continue to grow. But when I looked back at that first book, I'd say maybe 6-7 months later, I realized it was really written for people who were well on their way to self-love and were very conscious of what they were doing day to day. But I had not addressed to people who had not found their way to self-love and were not conscious. So that made me write this second book, The Heart of the Matter, to help people to understand we all have wounds, we all have things we need to heal, we all have beliefs that need to be changed. And I literally used my life to show people what I did to find my way back to self-love.
Wow, that's great. So they have a map that they know it works from firsthand experience. So take a moment and let's define before we really get into this. When you say self-love, what does that mean from your perspective?
Well, from my perspective, and all this book is my perspective, is strictly what I did to find self-love. The way I describe self-love, it is knowing in your heart that your core being is lovable, loving, and loved. Now, I say it that way because I want everyone to understand that self-love resides within your heart. You can think it in your head and have a lot of bravado, but in your heart, if you're feeling less than, that is what you're going to create in your life. So in your heart, your core being, again, not your personality. We build walls, we put masks on, all to say who we think we are. But your core being, who you came in here as, is lovable, loving, and loved. Now, if you want me to describe lovable, loving, and loved, I will.
Well, no, I think we have a pretty good handle on that. But it's
Okay.
just really interesting, as I'm going through this and interviewing the guests, everyone's coming at it like, self-love is kind of in the middle, but everyone has a different path and a slightly different definition. So that's become a very interesting part of this interview process for me.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm sure everyone has their own way to get to it, too.
Exactly. So now, like in your introduction, and this is a quote from there, self-love or the lack of self-love not only determines how we see ourselves, but also governs how we experience the world around us. And I thought, well, that is very insightful. So can you explain to the viewers, how does a lack of self-love impact our view of ourselves and our experiences?
Well, I said that because that's what I found to be true. Once you get out of your 20s, and maybe some of people in their 30s, you begin to look at the mask you've been wearing in your life, what you perceive to the world of who you are. But when you get underneath that mask, you suddenly decide, I am lacking in self-love. And you realize that lack of self-love made determinations for your life. For instance, when I was back in New York doing acting jobs, I would give it my best shot, thought I did a really good job. But underneath that was the belief I'm not good enough. I'm not talented enough. I'm not perhaps pretty enough, whatever it might be in the situation. What you believe about yourself determines how you view the world. If you view that the world is out to get you, you're going to see the world out to get you. And the world's going to play that part for you. I really believe what you believe the world, how the world's going to treat you is how the world is going to treat you. That's why I say how you see yourself is how you're also going to experience the world around you. So if you see yourself being less than, or not being talented enough, or not being more lovable enough, you're going to create experiences to prove that to be true. That's the
Is this
bottom
kind of
line.
a subconscious belief? You think people are even aware that they have this belief about themselves?
I don't think a lot of people do, to be honest with you. I think it is a subconscious belief. And I think when you hit a level in your life, and usually it's when you hit the bottom, when things fall apart in your life, or you lose everything you've owned, or you've lost your job, that's when you start looking inward. And that's when you start saying, you know what, the way I've been living my life has not been working. Why is that? And you start to ask yourself the deep questions. I think it's when you hit the bottom that you look
Hmm.
inward. Otherwise, if life's going easy breezy, why look inward? Your life seems to be okay. So that's what I found. When people hit the bottom, that's when they look inward.
Well, what just know, because some people that I've run into, they don't look inward, they look outward and they blame other people, not very often their spouse or I don't know, the president. I just like whatever.
Yeah.
They're blaming some other person for what has what their belief is and what they've manifested themselves. Is there some difference you found in personality type? Or what makes some people look in and some look out? I'm just very curious to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think it really depends on what you came here to do in this life, to be honest with you. Some people have the ability to look in, and that's a gift. But I think in general, the blaming energy, which I talk about a lot, the blaming energy is really the opposite side of the coin for the victim energy. You're either blaming somebody or you're being a bully. And the blaming is part of the victim energy. And when you're in the victim energy, you're not taking any responsibility for your own life. And I think that has to be called upon people when they blame. And I can go there, I can blame the president, I can, or the ex-president, I can blame whoever. But the truth of the matter is, if you're blaming somebody, it's really a message of the homework you need to do on yourself. Otherwise, that person wouldn't be bothering you as much. That's
Oof,
what I found to be true.
ouch. And I'm not even religious, but that sounded like something that would be said on the by the local pastor. So now we want to talk. Your book is on self love, and in our current social climate, where people are really, really, really struggling. I mean, so many millions out of work. People feel bad because they're losing their homes, they're losing their cars. There's really a lot going on that's attacking people personally. Why is it so important that we develop to take a little time out to develop self love for ourselves, even in this climate?
Well, again, I think this climate can serve a purpose in a way. In a way, it's a way of awakening everybody. When you're stuck at home and you're not going into work and you're working from home, that's a good time to look inward. You can't go out to movies, you can't go to restaurants, you can't go to parties. So you use the time to look inward. And I think more and more people are looking inward. They want to be more mindful, is the word people like to use. I
Yes.
want to be more mindful. But what does mindful really mean, people? I want to ask them that. Mindful is a great word, but I think in order to be rooted in self-love, you got to start asking yourself the deep questions. And I think this pandemic is a perfect time. I just talked to somebody and I needed to see where she was at in her growth. And I realized she was at the place that she just needed permission to cry. She thought it was wrong for her to want to cry. And I said, well, you need to determine that you can cry every day if you want. You can say between 9 to 10, I'm going to have a nice, good cry, and then I'll get on with my day. So you meet people where they're at. But I think this is a time for us to awaken. I think that's kind of what the gift of the pandemic really is. I don't think I really answered your question, but I kind of went
Well,
all
it's
around it. But
the answer is in there. People
okay.
just have to put on their thinking caps. But I did want to ask you, you use a term called emotional awareness throughout the book. And I wanted to find out what you thought, what role emotional awareness would play in developing self love and doing this inner work.
I think it's vital. I talk about the three tools you're going to use to find self love, and one of them is your imagination that you're going to use with meditation. The second one's your higher self. And then the third one, which is vitally important, are your emotions. And I think most of us have been trained to ignore our emotions, to shove our emotions down, to eat ice cream cone instead of feeling our emotions. And emotions are vital because once you clear out your old wounds, and you've healed your own wounds, then you're back into emotional balance. And then your emotions can become your navigational system to go through life because your emotions will tell you, hey, I think this would be a good thing for me to do. Or, no, I don't think this would be a good thing for me to do. But if you haven't healed your wound, you're going to be reacting to what life is presenting to you from a place of being wounded. So you're reacting from a hurt place versus a place of, having a navigational system guiding you. And that took a lot of my homework, was balancing my system, my emotions back down to the place they needed to be by healing my wounds. Now, when I get that little trigger, hey, I don't know why, but I don't think I should trust this person, I believe it.
So
I
the way
actually
you
believe
set
it.
this book up is like a workbook. So this work that you're talking about with that's part of the questions that people are answering for themselves.
Oh yeah, I mean the first part, like I said, you do the three tools, and each part has meditations within it. And meditation, really, the way I describe meditations is you close your eyes and you focus your attention. That's all it is. You don't have to light candles. You don't have to chant. You don't have to be sitting up. You can light. I used to do it in the hot tub when I get home from the gym at night. I'd get in the hot tub and I would do my meditation. But the trick is, I put everything in each chapter, so you ask yourself the questions. I included all the questions I asked myself. Then you read the discussion, and then you do a meditation. And the meditation gets you to meet your emotional body. So you can see, hey, my emotional body was wrapped with bandages like it was a mummy. I had put so many bandages on to keep it from hurting and to keep it from screaming at me that I had to unwrap it through meditations and get to the wounds. So you do each thing, each chapter has meditations that you can do, and then homework, because I'm a big believer in homework.
Yeah,
Homework
me
changed
too.
my life.
Okay, that I really like that format. So I just wanted to, see have the viewers understand the layout of the book and what the purpose was.
Well, the good thing is you don't have to do it all. Some people may not want to do a meditation. That may be too, I know, brouillage for them. They can just do the questions and start to ask themselves questions of, why do I feel the way I feel? And why do I think the way I think? That alone will make great shifts in your life. Or maybe you will do one or two meditations. Maybe you'll do it all, but it will meet you where you're at. Even if you just read the discussions, it at least gets you thinking a little deeper and looking inward a little bit more. I'm open.
That's oh God, that is what I promote on this channel. I've been doing that for years, for people to examine, some very closely held beliefs
Mm.
that I think is not really serving them well. So let's talk about part two of your book, the three components of self-love. What are those three?
Well, once I described what self-love, the way I describe self-love, so heart, in your heart, knowing that your core being is lovable, loving, and loved. And then we go to each chapter. The first is lovable, means you are worthy of love in the universe's eyes. Doesn't matter if another person on the planet loves you. You are worthy of love in the universe's eyes because you exist, period. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to prove it. You just are worthy of love. And then, of course, you do meditation, ask yourself questions. The second one is loving. And this is that you are born with a naturally benevolent heart waiting to be uniquely expressed through you. And how you express this loving heart is good enough in the universe's eyes. That's why in that chapter we talk about, that's where that feeling of not being good enough often resides. That how you're
Mm,
expressing this loving heart, because it's part of how we were born. Now we covered up with all our barriers and our walls and our fist up in the air, but we're naturally born with a beneficial heart waiting to be uniquely expressed through each of us, and it's good enough to the universe. The third one is you are loved, and that means that you matter and are valued by the universe, not for what you've done, not for what you will do, but because you are you. Just as you are valued because you are you, Deborah. So that's the three components. I make you ask questions. Who taught you this? Did it work for them? I have you do meditation, and then I give you homework. And that's the second part, because the first part, you worked on your tools, your
Right.
imagination and meditation. You worked on your higher self. You worked on opening up to the emotions that most people have a lot of difficulty with. And then you use that work to do the second part, learning that you're lovable, loving, and loved. And that's the
Now, do
second
these
part.
meditations, Joffrey, help people? Because this is something I see a lot too, especially women. They will give themselves so many negative messages. Looking in the mirror, oh, my nose is too big, my thighs. I don't like this about myself. And they tend to pick themselves apart and give themselves messages of not being good enough, not being knowledgeable enough, not having the proper whatever.
Mhm.
And so they make, I think we do more damage to ourselves than other people do to us.
Oh, I think that's definitely true. I think you've got that right on the head. But that's a sign of lack of self-love, really. And we do it because we see our mothers do it or our grandmothers do it. We see it on TV. And so we mirror it. But the truth of the matter is, you wouldn't mirror it if you weren't already believing that you weren't lovable, loving, and loved, frankly. Because I used to do it too. I don't do it anymore. I say, you know what? I look just fine. The wrinkles are coming. That's just fine. My gray's coming. That's just fine. But that's just a sign of a lack of self love. If you're beating yourself up in the mirror, that means you don't appreciate who you are in the moment. You don't appreciate that your flaws are good enough to go to the universe. They're good enough. But women tend to do it a lot more difficultly because we look for our value and our worth and that we matter and that our loving is good enough in outside people. And self
Yeah.
love is about finding that within yourself, not finding it within your spouse or your friends or your children. That's why women tend to, they have a little more difficult time doing that. So you
Yeah, I
know that
wanted to
right away.
ask you about that in particular challenges that you've noticed that women face that maybe men don't. If you've noticed anything
Well,
breaking down gender lines.
I think that's the main one is that women look outside of themselves for their value, that they matter, that they're worthy of love if they have a husband or a boyfriend or a partner. While men look at it, they tend to look at it from their jobs. So if they
Mm.
lose a job, then they fall apart. And that's their time to look inward. But women tend to do it in relationships. And the thing with self love is it's about loving yourself. You cannot get it from another person. Now, if you do, that's just the cherry on top of the sundae. But you're building that sundae yourself with your own self love. At least that's what I feel. So
Oh,
women do.
I'm in full agreement. I think, I've even heard women write into my advice column and say this phrase here, so and so, we broke up, but I don't know what to do. He gives me self esteem. This is a quote.
Yeah, I know women do that a lot. The thing is, it has to come from you, people, because people will come and go. People will move on. Sometimes they'll die, whatever. Life is about change. So if you don't have yourself rooted in self love, you're not going to be able to handle that change with grace and elegance, frankly. At least that's what I found. But yeah, you're totally right. They
Yeah.
gave me self esteem. No, you have self esteem. They're
Yeah.
the
I'm like,
cherry
how does
on
that
top of the
work when
sundae
it says the key part of that word is self?
because they're looking outside of themselves for it. Again, it's the cherry. It's not the sundae.
I call it the frosting on the cake.
There you
It's like
go.
the
Frosting up.
cake is supposed to be good already.
There you go. Exactly. Well, I like ice cream. That's why I say ice cream.
Well, let's talk about the third part of the book, investigate, interrogate, and integrate. I like that, all eyes. So tell us, what does that all that entail?
That's when you're going to become the spiritual detective. You've done your tools, you're getting comfortable doing your meditations, you've learned what self love is, you're still doing, and again, it's circular. This work is circular, it's not linear, but I teach it linearly, but it's circular. Then you go to the third part, and that's when you become the spiritual detective. You're going to begin to look inward. You're comfortable with your emotions. You begin to ask yourself questions. You're good with meditation. And now you're going to start to dialogue with yourself in meditation. Now, I didn't dialogue out loud. I just did it within my head. But you begin to talk to the various parts of yourself that are still stuck in the past. I call them your inner orphans. And I had about 3 or 4 inner orphans that needed some healing, needed to be listened to, first of all, really listened to. And once you listen to them, and they're all different. One was very quiet, just hid behind a tree. Another one was screaming at me. She was so full of anger and rage. So they're all slightly different. But you begin to dialogue with them and you get to understand what they're feeling and why they feel they're not worthy of love, why they're not loving enough, why they're not loved. And you begin to work with them to heal them, to transmute their pain. So the third part's really using what you've learned to begin to heal yourself, to heal your wounds, your inner orphans, and to forgive yourself and learn how to forgive those who have harmed you. It's where you do all the heavy lifting work.
Ooh, that sounds like that sounds like it would make people have some go through some changes.
Well, hopefully that's why I wrote it as a workbook and guide, because I read many thousands of books on spirituality, on personal growth, and I read beautiful words, books that were written beautifully. But it wasn't till I started doing my own work that I wrote this book like I did my work, because I thought I'll leave the beautiful words to the great authors who write beautiful words, and I'll get down to the crux of it. This is what I did. I say, be like a child, make it up as you go along. Use your imagination. I try to do it so people realize you really do already have everything you need already inside of you. I'm just sort of waking it up so you can use it.
Excellent. I like that. Is this work, Joffrey? Is this something that has to be done solo, or can say, I don't know, a group of 3 or 4 women get together and do this work together? What do you think?
Well, I think you have to do some of this work on your own. The inner orphan work, talking to your wounded parts, really needs to be on your own, because you're going to be very raw and very vulnerable when you're opening up those wounds. But you can certainly have a small group that you can go and talk about. Like, I had a friend that I wrote the first book about, that she passed on, that we did our homework for the last 30 years together. So we'd say, well, this is what I did in the tub when I was doing meditation. What'd you do? Okay, I'm going to use what you did. So we shared our tips. And I think it's very important to have a group that you can share your tips with. But I think, unfortunately, it's about self-love, and that means about you doing it yourself.
Okay. I was just trying to see if there would be any benefit, because I think, I'm looking at this and kind of imagining what some women are going to have to bring, what they're going to be bringing up. And I think some people might, not guaranteed, might benefit from having a close friend that they can, lean on for a little support as they go through this process.
Oh, I think
But
that's imperative. You got to have a close friend you can share all this work with. That is imperative,
okay.
especially women. Women need a
Yeah.
close friend to share this stuff with.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because I thought, someone trying to deal with this on their own, they might be kind of overwhelmed and a little terrified.
That's why you have a friend who goes, well, I did that, and this is how I healed it, or this is how I calmed myself down. Because each meditation you end each meditation with adding love. And that's really the homework of the entire book, is moving back into love. And that's the hard work. So to have a
Yeah.
friend say, well, this is how I dealt when I dealt with this wound, I added this so that it made me feel more loved. So I really agree with you. You need a good friend to share this work with. I couldn't have
Okay.
done it without my best friend.
Yeah. Sounds like it. She was really, really great.
Yeah, she was.
So, what benefits do you think? Okay, so we got this book, and people are like, oh, I don't know if I want to do all of that. But okay, at the end of this tunnel, there's a rainbow. So, what are the benefits to women of finding themselves and finding self love?
Well, I think one of the first benefits that I noticed was the inner voices that we all have. I call them your inner committee. Maybe it's your hopeless one, or your critic, or your judge. We all have like 3 or 4 of them. They all switched. Because I did inner work on them, of course, but they all switched. Now the inner voices are very loving and supportive and champion me. That is a huge shift from having that voice when I go into an audition saying, well, you're not talented enough, you're not pretty
Right.
enough, I don't have that voice anymore. That doesn't mean I'm fearless, but I really have these strong inner voices that are encouraging, supportive, and kind. That was number one, and that alone was
Mm,
well worth it. I'd say the second thing is I look to myself for my own needs, which takes the pressure off of my relationships. You talked about women saying, but he gave me self-esteem. Well, you were putting it all on him. That's ridiculous, frankly. That's absolutely ridiculous. So I look for my own needs, and now my relationships bring me joy versus trying to fill a hole that I have in my heart. So that was the second thing. And I'd say the third thing is I trust myself now much more than I used to, because I know if I hit an area that I'm shaky in, I know I can close my eyes, go into meditation, and I can figure out how to move through it. You suddenly do realize, I said it before and I'll say it again, you really do have everything you need already inside of you for the journey before you. This trip showed me that. So, it also gives you a great amount of freedom to explore the life versus having your hands up ready to fight through life.
Right.
And that's certainly worth it.
Well, yeah, that's was a big question I have, because so many women, get to the point where they doubt themselves. Even they question if they have the right to be angry, if they have the right. Is it okay to, get rid of this guy, or to be heard about few things? It's just really, it drives me crazy. So I'm glad to see that you have something to help them deal with developing trust. You have a photo bomber back there.
I got a little kitty getting off a chair, don't I? She suddenly woke up. But yeah, women need to realize that they've got to do this for themselves so much. And we're so trained to look outside of ourselves. And the good thing is, when you do your self-love work, Deborah, when I discovered I was worthy of love and I was good enough and I was valued, suddenly I saw other people were also worthy and good enough and valuable. And when I found that I had self-compassion for myself, I suddenly had much more compassion for other people. So what you're doing for yourself, you suddenly are able to do for instance, when I was able to have self-acceptance of my flaws, I was less judgmental of other people's flaws. This
Hmm.
work, like I said, is circular, and women desperately need it because they tend to put everything on the other person they're in a relationship with. And I think that's not very healthy, frankly.
Yeah, and it's really puts them overburdens their partner with responsibility for their peace of mind and happiness, self confidence, self esteem. I mean, just everything is just too much. So any guy, I think, would start to shut down and kind of start wanting to dip out emotionally, because it's just too much. It just
Well,
overburdens them.
you can't be responsible for making somebody happy. I hear people say, "But he makes me so happy." Well, wait a minute. Were you were not happy till you met him? That's an issue there. They can again be the frosting on the cake or the
Hmm.
cherry on the sundae, but they shouldn't be the whole thing. Absolutely not. You got that completely right.
Yeah, that's a hard lesson for them to learn. Well, this has been really great. I want to give you an opportunity to share with the viewers where they can find out more information about you and the books that you've written.
Well, you can go to my website, which is it's allaboutselflove.com, ITS, allaboutselflove.com. Or you can check me out at healthylife.net. I do a radio show once a month on self-love. It's called Spiritual Common Sense, first Monday of every month. And on my website, you can read little excerpts from my books, decide if you want to read it or not. Um, and you can Facebook and Instagram me if you like. But I'm willing to answer any questions anybody has. And again, I think we're all on the same path of wanting to wake up, wanting to find self-love, and to be more who we came here to be.
Yeah, because as long as you're wallowing around, you're not doing your work. You're not doing your
Mm-hmm.
spiritual work. You're still trying to find your way. And so we have this month here with all these great guests, including yourself, to try to give people kind of a jump start to get focused to start doing what they're here to do.
Well, you're doing a great job, I have to say, what you're doing. I really appreciate the work you're doing and the years you put in on this. It's very appreciative.
As you see, it's aging me. Oh, my gray
Oh,
hair.
please, let's not talk about age.
Well, I
Hey,
really
we're lucky
enjoyed
we're
this.
getting older, frankly. That's what I
Yeah,
say.
I mean, because the option is you don't.
Yeah, well, we'd be dead, wouldn't we? So I'm glad I'm
Yeah,
getting
so
older.
I'm like, which one do I prefer? Well, thank you very much, Joffrey. This is great. And I will be in touch and give you the link to the show once it's up.
Oh, thank you so much for having me and have a great day and have a great February or
I will.
Debruary.
Yes, we will. Thank you so much. I'll
Thank
talk to
you.
you soon. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.